Good morning. So here we are again. Thank you to everybody for being here. It's wonderful to see a full room and so early in the morning. Lots of bright eyes and big smiles, which is fantastic. Now, for those of you who have been here before, I know that you will remember that I very much like to start the symposium from within the audience. And that's specifically because one of the things that we want to deliver today is to make sure that you, as the attendees, leave here feeling that you have taken away something of real value. So what better way to start than actually listening to you to understand what those key takeaways would be. So I'm going to start here in the audience. Jane, come and stand with me, please. So this is Jane Bates, everyone. Jane Bates, Travelodge.
Yes, yep.
Also a procurement specialist and also an alumni of our EEA King's Executive Education Program.
You're going to test me?
No, not yet, not yet. We won't test you. But I would very much like to know, Jane, if there was one key headline that you would like to leave with us to say, Ufi, deliver this for me today and I'll feel like I had a really good conference, what would that be?
I will try and make that very succinct, but lovely to be here, Ufi. And for me, the sustainability agenda is evolving so rapidly. I really want to take today new ideas, particularly innovation. I do have a huge passion for the supply chain and what new technology, etc., is out there. So for me, it's about networking, gaining ideas, and really sharing insight and opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. We're going to try and deliver that. Thank you very much. Now it's over to you all, everyone. Please turn to the person to your right or to your left and share. Tell them, share with each other, what is the one key takeaway that you would like today to leave with from this symposium? And do that by the time it takes me to get to the audience. So please, go ahead and share. Fantastic. It's amazing, isn't it? Given the opportunity, we have so much to share. I hope that you understand from this outset that this is not a passive conference. That's not the business that the EEA are in. In fact, one of my own personal firm beliefs is that the more knowledge that we share, the more knowledge we can create. And that's really convergence. You are convergence today. That's the theme of our symposium. Here, you are the influencers. You are the investors. You are the bankers, the lenders, the operators, the experts, the regulators, the standard setters, those who are professional and expert in technology, new innovations. That's all of you. And you are here today as a diverse audience, not to watch in a passive way, but to share, to provide knowledge and to create new knowledge and to be able to take away new knowledge. And one of my other firm beliefs is that in the art of gathering, which is something that one of our members, Xander Bueno de Mesquita, wave to everyone, Xander, shared with me after, I think, the first symposium, and he said, you have to read this book, you've got to improve this art of gathering, forget about normal conferences, let's do something different. And he was absolutely right, so I read the book, of course, very judiciously. And one of the things that struck me is it's not only about the knowledge we share and create, it's also about the connections that we make. Connections are very important. So it is my wish that today each of you will at least meet one other person that you will seriously consider doing business with. And in a few weeks' time, or in a few days' time, when perhaps we can have a coffee or we can have a Zoom together so that you can give me feedback about today, I really hope that we will have at least achieved these two things. New knowledge and new connections. And that's the business that the EEA is in. We are brokers of knowledge and we are brokers of meaningful connections. Now, none of this would be possible, though, if it were not for our hosts and our sponsors. So please, can we have the sponsors slide up? I'm not going to list everyone because that would take up too much time. Just to say a huge thank you to all of our sponsors, but in particular, thank you very much, Armando, for, again, this amazing, real, natural, living wall on our stage. Thank you again for doing that. They were here till late last night putting this up. And, of course, to our hosts, particularly to our host, the 4C Group. And it's my pleasure, therefore, to introduce the General Manager here, Ruocco, to actually welcome us officially to the symposium. So Raf, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Allow me to apologize briefly for the slight delay for the start of the conference. We were investigating and eventually we fixed a power failure that happened this morning. Unexpected things happen all the time, so luckily the team was on it and we managed to start eventually. It is a real pleasure to welcome you all for this year's conference. We are incredibly proud to be hosting it for the 5th year in a row. And the fact that this room keeps on growing year after year shows one important thing, that sustainability in hospitality is no longer a side conversation. It is central to the performance and long-term success in this industry. Here at the Westin London City, together with our ownership group, 4C, sustainability is part of how we operate every single day. We have achieved, just to give you a few examples, we have achieved a number of awards and certifications, starting from Green Tourism Gold certification, recognizing our commitment to responsible operations. We have also achieved gold level status on the pledge on food waste, with measurable reductions in food waste across our kitchens and supply chain. And the building, the beautiful building we're in, is BREEAM certified, reflecting sustainable design and operational standards. These recognitions matter because they shape and they influence the decisions that we make every single day as a business. And the theme of the year for this year's conference is Convergence. For us, Convergence means that decisions can no longer sit in separate departments, as it used to be when I personally started in the industry, when finance was looking only at cost, sales was focusing on revenues, operations took care of the service, engineering was only in charge of the building, and sustainability was sitting somewhere in a limbo without real focus and without being the real, say, central topic of the conversation. That model, at least for us, no longer works. Today, in order to make sensible decisions, we normally like to answer 5 simple questions. Is this decision right for the guest? Is this decision right for the team? Is this decision right for the brand that we represent? Is this decision okay for the building, to look after the building? And last, but certainly not least, does it make financial sense? Is it going to make a huge impact? Is it going to make any impact on our profit and loss? If that decision only answers one of these questions, then it needs more work. And that's our approach. And because of this alignment and this strategy being so structured and measurable, we've been able, throughout the years, to secure a more favorable financing terms that we might have otherwise achieved without that strategy. Just 3 examples for you. First, energy. Nowadays, energy and comfort are in the same conversation, even in the same sentence sometimes, when back in the day it was impossible. They were competing forces, pulling away from each other. Guests don't care about kilowatt per hour. They care about sleeping well and in a consistent room temperature, possibly the one they've chosen. And by monitoring and optimizing our system continuously, not only do we reduce energy waste, but also improve comfort at the same time, avoiding annoying and costly temperature fluctuations in the room that I'm sure each one of you has experienced at some point while staying in a hotel room. Second, brand and transparency are now converging, back to the theme of the year. Now, I was mentioning earlier on about the accreditations. They also have a huge commercial impact in our case, because they helped us secure, they're giving us a commercial advantage because they helped us securing important pieces of business that we wouldn't have secured otherwise. Clients, guests, customers, day by day, year after year, they are increasingly asking for evidence. Certifications, food waste data, carbon footprint, measurable progress, you name it. So credibility comes from consistency. You can only achieve those awards if you are consistent in the way you do, not with claims. Otherwise, it's just greenwashing. Third, and I know everybody's worried nowadays because there's a big conversation happening about AI and automation in general. Now, hopefully the business, hospitality business, will remain a human business for the foreseeable future. However, we shouldn't be scared of technology and automation at the same time, because that will help us reducing the amount of admin and reporting that we nowadays constantly do, and will help us focusing on what really matters and obviously taking care of the guest. So as you move through today's session, we were talking about takeaways earlier on. Here's what I hope you will take away from my hopefully brief intro. First of all, decide across functions by answering those 5 questions I was mentioning before, if you like. Measure what really matters, and don't get lost in a multitude of metrics and KPIs. Focus on the ones that can really give you the information that you're looking for, and that will help making the right decision. And last, which is actually very important to me, remember always, a plan is of no use if not executed. Years ago, someone told me that hospitality people are a bit picky, a bit strange, because we always aim for perfection. You know, if it's not perfect, it's not okay. It's not good for our guest, and that stopped us from, executing a plan. They will remain a paperwork exercise sitting on everybody's desk. This person once told me that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, when it comes to executing a plan, done is better than perfect. So my suggestion to you is sometimes get on with it. Make sure that your plan, even if it's not perfect, it's executed. Set the ball in action and eventually tweak it as you move along. That's the only way to eventually achieve what you're trying to achieve. My view, our view is to move from ambition to execution, because if without clear ownership, without accountability at every level of the plan, you won't be achieving what you're trying to achieve. So once again, thank you for being here for today's conference. We look forward to the conversation and partnerships that will emerge throughout the day. Allow me to say thank you to the people who have been working tirelessly behind the scene, our ownership group 4C, the F&B team, the hotel team, production and the organization of the conference. I really hope it will be a successful one for you. Also, enjoy the zero food waste dishes that are being served in the breakout space later on, and speak to our team. Engage with our green champions, who are the driving force of our sustainability journey, and continue the conversation. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marc, for those of you who don't know. I've done this, it's my 4th year, I think, Ufi. Is that right? 4th year. So I'm nearly as old as the event itself. And it's great to see so many familiar faces. We are behind, so as you know, I don't do this very formally. We'll stick to the usual rules. Let's be very succinct. I was delighted, Jane, when you stood up and said, I'm going to try and be succinct. That's exactly the right thing to be. And we're not going to bother with long titles. They're all written on the screen. We all know each other. We can find each other very easily. It's in the program. So we'll just kind of get a clip. And we are obviously, unfortunately, delayed. The best laid plans often go wrong. So trust me to manage, for those of you who are moderating panels and talking, etc., trust me and Sean to manage it for you. Don't worry, all of us, we'll get our allocated time. There are trade-offs. I'm an economist, as many of you will know, and we see the world usually in terms of trade-offs. And we have to make one trade-off before we even start, which is the initial coffee break, which was coming far too early anyway. So we're going to get rid of that. If anybody wants a cup of coffee, just go out on your own and get one, okay? But we obviously need that time. Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick little, and thank you for that, Rafa, for bringing up so many of the topics, and Ufi. But I think we need to remember that we are probably people who believe in this or see a need for this, right? And we have to remember that more and more people are actually going the other way, okay? And again, as an academic, we have to look at the facts the way they are, not the way we want them to be. And I think we will all have to deal with people who are perhaps have never believed, or perhaps are conveniently saying that they now don't believe it's as urgent or even it's necessary at all. And that's the reality of our lives. They could be designers, lawyers, partners, directors, whoever it may be. That's the reality, and we have to face it. Okay? So I'm going to do a little setup. Hopefully it'll be informative. For those of you who don't know, or some of you may have seen, last Friday, I think it was, another executive order from Mr. Trump revoked, the EPA revoked what they call the endangerment finding, which essentially is the legal basis that was brought in under Obama, which is the basis of most of the sustainable climate law in America, okay? And there are 4 people, by the way, who have been working at this pretty much since it came in. Okay, they've been working to overthrow it. And they regard this this revoking the other day as the final victory. One of them is a guy called Geoffrey Clark, and he believes that climate rules and climate change is a Leninist plot to seize control of the economy and to harm the American people. Okay? And the reason I say that is, obviously I disagree with Mr. Clark, but that's not really the point. He's entitled to his opinion. The point is it's an ideology. Okay? And this is a massive political issue we're dealing with. There are huge trade-offs, huge costs, penalties. There aren't that many incentives, if we're honest, to do the right thing, right? So we need to pick through all this and find out what they are. Okay? So that's what I'm going to try. And I think one of the things with these ideologues, and particularly Trump and his ilk, they're very, very good at sucking all the oxygen out of the debate and out of the media. What that masks is a lot of very good work that's continuingly, rather boringly happening, plodding along underneath. It's not exciting, but there's a lot of good stuff happening. And so what I'd like to do is to point, and we're going to hear from a lot of people who are working hard on creating that good stuff. So I'd like to just lay out a new system that I believe is emerging around hospitality. Some of you will have seen this. We were at a thing last Friday. I've added in a few more slides to make it a bit more interesting in case I get really boring. So let me just quickly do this. The slides are complicated. I'll explain why it's complicated. Do not worry about the detail. Just follow me as I walk you through it. All the detail and all the writing on them, you'll get copies later. Ignore it. It really doesn't matter. I'll explain why it is the way it is in a moment. Okay. So the reason I want to talk about this is that, is this working? Andrew, Mark, yeah? The reason I want to talk about this is that I think, again, let's look at the facts, okay? We need to focus on our businesses, what matters to our businesses in 3, 5, 10, 20 years, depending on how long you're in it for. Let's be honest, Trump and Mr. Clark and Farage and anyone else, they don't care about your business. They have no interest in it at all. Zilch. Okay? We care about our businesses. Nobody else will. So let's focus on this. I call this a wicked system. Wicked because I think over the years we've come to realize this is a very, very complex issue. Climate change is incredibly multidimensional. There is no end goal here. There's no end state. There's no right and wrong answer. It's the best we can do with the information we have at the time. Okay? So what I'm trying to do here is to put this information that I believe also exists and that is counter and is actually factual rather than ideology, okay, into this system. And it's a new way of thinking about a system. Now, typically, in the world, we are very linear in our thinking. We believe that A affects B. Okay, and a big problem is just lots of little parts of A and Bs all over the place, and if we add up all the A and Bs, we get the system. That's not true. Okay, a system is full of interrelated parts. Okay, lots of different parts making up the whole. They all speak to each other in different ways and affect each other and impact each other in different ways. And all I want you to take out of this slide is that most of these relationships, there are two kinds of relationships typically in a system. One is either reinforcing, in other words, the more I do of one thing, the more of another thing happens. So it's a positive feedback, if you like. And the other one is it's a balancing system. So if I do more of one thing, it means less of another thing. And what you're going to see in this slide, and what it is an actual systems map, by the way, is that pretty much everything is reinforcing, i.e. more of one thing leads to more of another thing. It's intensifying all the time. Okay? So bear with me as I take you through it. So we know we've got global things happening globally to the weather systems. Let's leave the ideology and the argument about climate change out of this. We know that there are lots of climatic incidents happening at a global level and at a local level. And just a quick example, the more things that happen globally, the more happens locally, and the more that happens locally plays back into the global system. So that's that reinforcement idea that I was just talking about. And we know from our time at this conference, and hopefully on the King's course, which many of you have been on, and please do come to the next one. This kind of thinking is in the next one, by the way. Starts in April. Is we know that those impacts are playing out in physical risks, which are, as we know, wildfires, floods, droughts, hurricanes, etc., and transition risks, which are essentially risks to the business model. Okay, so food inflation is a really good example. Probably about 1% of the food inflation that we're all dealing with at the moment has been sourced to heat waves and crop failures because of climate change. Okay, so it is having an effect, whatever Mr. Clark thinks and whatever he tells us. Okay, the point is, if you go to the left-hand side here, that these impacts are doing something which I think is going under the radar a little bit, but it is happening. And again, it doesn't matter what Mr. Clark tells us is happening. They are putting infrastructure stress on metropolitan areas. Okay, so last summer, Tokyo issued the world's first resilience bond. This is a metropolitan area responsible for 35 million people going, we have to raise the sea walls. The sea level is rising too fast. It's going to drown all the power cables, the bridges, the railway, etc. We have to lift a huge amount of infrastructure and protect it and build it, okay, and move it. So they need money to do that, okay? And metropolitan areas all around the world are actually looking at this, okay? And it's not federal, by the way. So it doesn't matter what Trump says, and I'll show you a map in a moment of where this is happening. But more and more cities, metropolitan areas are waking up to this vast bill that's heading their way. And as a result, some of them are putting in place building performance regulation. We know in Europe we have the EBPD, is it that right? I never know which way around it is. But anyway, you know, that's in place at the moment. So this time, roughly March next year, you will all be, for those of you who have properties in Europe, will be submitting your 2026 figures. Okay, so it's real, it's now. Okay, and the reason I put it up here is that it's built on two big foundations which have quietly been getting on with. We're going to hear from Alexander about the improvement in greenhouse gas emissions accounting, which is something that's long overdue. As you know, in this room, we've often talked about financial grade auditable data. That's what we need. And he's going to tell us about the next iteration of the protocol, which is great. We're going to hear from Nikolai about IFRS disclosure, these famous accounting standards, which have been in gestation for a long time. Finally, in Britain, they're in consultation at the moment. And that's all emerging. So you've got a lot of energy quietly going on here, forcing disclosure, okay, of much better quality data. These are the cities, by the way. When you look at North America, again, don't worry about the detail. It's not just New York, which is the famous local law 97. There's a list of cities there that have it right now in place or are just about to put it in place. Okay? Europe we know about. Through China, they're beginning to regulate a lot. India, all over the world, there is building performance regulation going into place at the metropolitan level, the city level. Okay? Because they're the ones who are going to have the bill. National government isn't going to want to pay. They never do. Okay? What we want to talk about, though, is the other side of this system. Because a lot of people will say, well, the regulation mightn't happen in the end. Someone will back off. And maybe that's true. So let's turn to the insurance side, which is the blue side. Okay? We know that there are more and more climate events, which the dark green is insured losses, and the bit that's really scary, if you have uninsured losses. Okay, that's the light green, and that's growing all the time. We can see it there. The trend is clearly up. And obviously, if you have uninsured property, or you can't get insurance, which is happening more and more, as in California, large parts of Australia, parts of Britain now, flood insurance is just getting too expensive for people. Okay, if that's the case, it massively impacts your underlying property values, probably to the point where it wipes them out. Okay, it certainly undermines your refinancing. And as more and more data comes out of Alexander and Nikolai's organizations, the ability of capital markets and insurance markets to price the risk goes up all the time. It gets better and better. People are going to get more and more aware. So when you come to selling your property, people are going to go, well, is there penalties in your city if you overshoot? What's the carbon risk premium, right? If you haven't refurbed, I might have to refurb. What's the cost? Those things are going to come straight off the price before you even start. Okay, you can see here what the insurance company thinks is happening to natural catastrophe losses. Look at the trends. One standard deviation, look at the difference. I don't know what the figure for 2025 turned out to be, but I think it's quite close to this estimate. So the insurance company, the insurance providers are under no illusion as to what's going on. And I don't think we should be either, irrespective of what Mr. Clark tells us. And you can see here, this is catastrophe bonds purchased by insurance companies who are realizing they have to pay out more and more and more money, which they obviously want to do less and less. So they're issuing catastrophe bonds more and more. You can see here, right? And again, this year's kicked off already. So the insurers know something, as we've been saying for a few years now. Their business is risk. They understand it better than anyone else, and I think we need to. So I think you need to take resilience measures. You need to think about them, especially if you're thinking of holding onto your property for around the midterm, 4-8 years onwards. You really, really need to think about these mitigation, but also adaptation measures, which Ian can obviously tell us a lot about in his organization. And by doing that, we're improving access to finance, and we get this more virtual circle, which Raffaele was talking about. And just to remind us all, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the politicians say. They are being opportunistic. Okay? This is a picture on the Economist, you'd have seen it, but on the right-hand side, on your left-hand side, is the flood warning risks in Britain on Friday night. So somebody, whoever's in number 10, it doesn't really matter, can say it's all fine, it's all a hoax. Meanwhile, the Met Office are telling you, you better get the sandbags out. Okay, so which one are we going to listen to? It's perfectly simple. And I think it's an important thing to keep coming back to the facts. Okay, that's enough from me. What we are going to do for the rest of the day, I hope that makes sense, and obviously we can talk more about it as we go through. So what we're going to do for the rest of the day, please, the only way to ask a question is through this Mentimeter. So please take the code. For those of you who are moderating, I'll remind you, but as your session goes on and the panel goes on, please enter your questions. They'll all come up here on the screen in front of the moderators who can read them, and hopefully they'll choose your question, but there's no guarantee they will, but it's worth asking it anyway. At the end of the session, though, I believe, Sean, all the questions will be collated, and there'll be some attempt to answer them as usual. Great.